Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to yet another edition of the Pure Digital Passion Podcast with me, Moses Kemibaro. My guest today is Kiiru Muhoya, the founder and CEO of Fingo, a neobank here in Kenya and also operating across the continent, hoping to serve the African youth with a range of innovative and interesting financial services across the board. Karibu sana, Kiiru.
Thank you for having me, Moses. Yeah.
So, Kiiru, this is a podcast I think we've been discussing for a while.
We have.
should have done this, I think, last year.
My apologies, and thanks for having me.
But it's great to finally have you here.
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So, Kiiru, you're running Fingo. First of all, where does the name come from?
So, Fingo means finance on the go.
Okay.
It was, a debate when we were starting out what to call it, and we had a bunch of names, and we decided on a portmanteau, which is just combination of words, finance on the go. We thought it was unique, kind of embodied what we wanted to do, which is just a fast-moving service that kind of fit into the days of young people.
Okay, nice. So I'd like to go back maybe to your origin story. Growing up, probably back to high school and the likes. Can you give us some background about yourself, a little bit maybe from that time, and then maybe take us to, going to university to the UK and, sort of build it up from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Kenya.
Yes.
I went to, I think my first recollection of a school is in Nyeri, Mount Kenya Academy. So I studied there. I did my KCB. So I'm very fluent in Kiswahili. Don't doubt it, but also don't test me.
Okay.
And then I did IGCSE. I went to Braeside and Brookhouse. I studied, a couple of subjects, but I think primarily like I was academically strong, but I also loved extracurriculars. I loved everything outside of kind of the basic learning.
Okay.
So I think that gave me life, sports, and debate, and anything I could get my hands on, especially like entrepreneurship and innovation. So I really enjoyed that exposure it gave me, and the path after that was to university. So I went to the UK. I went to a university called University of Warwick. I studied philosophy, politics, and economics.
That's an interesting combination.
It is. It is.
What inspired the choice?
Honestly, it was less so the degree, more so that I didn't know what specifically I wanted to study. So I picked a broad range of things. It was much harder than I thought it would be.
Really?
It was
Wow.
quite a challenging course.
Uh-huh.
You had like very many disciplines. One in the morning you're doing like, math and econ class. In the evening you're doing a philosophy class. So like switching between that during the day was interesting. But I loved it. I loved being on campus at Warwick. I met amazing friends. I learned more about Africa in university in a different continent than I did like whilst I was here. So that really gave me perspective on the continent, because I think growing up, you just get a view of Kenya, and I think that's what our education system does. It like gives you like random names of rivers, in North Kenya, but like you don't really understand Africa. You don't understand the context that we're in. So I think stepping outside of the continent, you're able to like view it as one kind of really big diverse place. So that really gave me a interesting perspective on Africa.
What about, I mean, obviously living away from home, maybe for the first time in the UK, multicultural. I think University of Warwick has a very good reputation, if I remember correctly. What was that like, just, being away from home and being in a school like that?
Good question. I mean, to be honest, I've always been adventurous.
Okay.
So it wasn't daunting. Like, in fact, actually, prior to that, like my plan was not even not going to go to university. I was
Oh,
just gonna like start businesses, and
no way.
I was.
So the entrepreneurial streak was there
It
already.
was actually, I did a gap year before
Uh-huh.
university. I did something in housing. I started
Nice.
a housing nonprofit called Bill for Kenya.
Uh-huh.
So actually, my plan was not to go to university. So it was actually quite an achievement that they got me. My parents got me there, and I thank them for that.
Yeah, yeah.
So by the time I was going to university, like I was already like super independent. Like
Mhm.
I took myself, got there, made friends from day one, found a really good community of passionate people, both about Africa and other things,
Okay.
technology, and even just like discussing ideas on how society is structured.
Wow.
So I
The
think
philosophy side,
the
maybe.
philosophy side, like that,
Yeah.
that gave me a really interesting perspective on how malleable everything is. So like democracy is, relatively new. Democracy in Africa, financial technology, currency, like you just learn to question everything. And yeah, so I think I kind of already had a rebellious spirit, and then giving me an education made me even more like rebellious, because I was like, okay, now I understand the
You have
systems,
the insight.
but I
Yeah.
really don't like them, and I really think they can change. Yeah,
I start to suspect that some of that is the seed that becomes Fingo, but I think we'll get to that in a bit. And
100%.
would you say the entrepreneurial piece was a family thing as well? Was there maybe a parent or somebody near you who was an entrepreneur and that kind of triggered that as well?
No, actually,
Yeah.
no.
So you're kind of in an outlier in that
No, my
sense.
parents are both like same job their whole
Uh-huh.
careers. I think even starting to be an entrepreneur, they're just like shaking their heads, not
They're not buying this
understanding.
story.
They're not buying the story. They're just like, "What are you up to, kid?"
Yeah, yeah,
So, no, I think I don't know where it came from. I think it was just a channel of wanting to do something good. An
yeah.
entrepreneur becomes that channel, because you can use different channels. You can be a nonprofit. You can kind of advocate for things. So I think you want to do something good, or you hate how something is being done. So you find a channel to do it, and entrepreneurship was just one of those ways.
And I think the entrepreneur mindset is obviously, like myself, and I think what we tend to see is a status quo that we're not feeling is right, that something needs to change, that there's a gap to be filled with what we can bring into the world, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's Steve Jobs who, I'll paraphrase, but the world is. He said that the world is built or structured by people who are no smarter than you are. Right.
Mm,
And the second you realize that is when you realize, oh shoot, let me not curse. Oh snap, you can poke the fabric of this world and change it, right?
mm,
So I think that realization is, the things around you are malleable. They were built by people,
yeah,
right? And those people are no smarter than you.
yeah.
So I think that kind of triggered something in me to like, just look at the things that are unfair or upsetting, or,
Mm,
could be better, Yeah.
absolutely. So I'm guessing you finished your degree program, you came back.
Yes.
Clearly you came back. So what
Yeah,
happened
I'm back.
next?
So I mean, even coming back was quite a discussion.
Yeah.
So I think I knew I wanted to come back. I think around my second year. It's a 3 year
Uh-huh.
degree. So in my second year, I just decided not to apply for any jobs.
Oh.
And I think I was just preparing my parents. I'm going to come back. I'm going to do something in entrepreneurship, and then so that I don't back out, I'm just not going to apply for anything, so that I
Mm,
don't have any option other than to like do this thing I said I was going to do.
okay.
So I got back, you know, parents not too happy after paying a lot of money, and
Mm,
really being encouraging. And I mean, they were really happy with the degree, and then they would have loved for me to kind of get a job and then start the entrepreneur journey later. But I don't know. I just thought the time was right,
okay.
and I had less to lose at that point.
Yes,
So like
yes.
the experimenting, the kind of spirit of what was happening. So I graduated in 2019. There was a really strong, rise in kind of tech, Africa tech startups around that time.
Mm,
It was just beginning, so the timing was just right. Yeah, so I came back, and I was looking at how do I kind of acclimatize back to Kenya. And there's this phenomenon which is kind of reverse culture shock, where you kind of
mm,
leave, kind of in this environment and come back and you're changed, the environment is different.
mm.
So just acclimatizing back, understanding, my country and my kind of role in that and how I can progress that. So that took a couple months. I had a couple of incredible mentors who kind of took me under
Uh-huh.
the wing, and I was able to kind of really connect with the business community here. And then after that, like I think initially I just knew I wanted to do something in software, and then the trigger really came from having a bad experience in the banking,
Uh-huh.
kind of the banking institutions here, just a
Yes.
bad experience. And then realizing that this experience is shared by so many young people, and that was kind of the trigger to like specifically pull on this neobank thing.
So obviously this is arriving to the moment you want to do a neobank, but was it a straight line? Was there Did you experiment? Did you try different business models? And then, of course, I'm just also interested to hear how, the crystallization of the idea, maybe with your co-founders and others. What is that process like? Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting co-founders is probably, I think, the best achievement in the early stage,
Mm.
because again, you're kind of, you know, just me in, my room,
Ah,
kind of like in the basement, sort of, kind of sending emails to people saying, "Do you want to join this project?" And I think one intentional thing I did was I made it seem like a big thing. So like I
ah.
wasn't just inviting people; I was asking them to apply. Like, I was like, I would think about the smartest people that I've worked with, that I've either been, in the same university or high school
Yeah.
with, and I'll just put them in a list. Then I'd be like, who are the most high integrity of the smart people? And then who do
Mm.
I want to actually work with? And then what I do is I'd create like a invitation to apply to be my co-founder. Uh,
Wow.
and at this point, there was just nothing. Like the
It's
company
conceptual
did
at this
it's
point.
conceptual. I'm in my mom's house just chilling and being pressured to go get a job. But I'm like, no, I
Wow.
think this is gonna be big. I want the right people who are motivated. So I'm gonna make it, seem like a big thing. So I sent out this invitation to apply. A few people are like, hell no. But a few people did end up applying, and
Mm.
they ended up being my co-founders from a mix of high school and university.
Nice.
So I think that was the initial like success. And then from there, we tested out. We now knew we wanted to do something in banking, neobanking. There were a couple of kind of case studies around the world, and at the time, there weren't even like big companies at the time. Like they were like, just starting out. I think
Mm.
Africa hadn't had its first unicorn yet, or had one. I think Europe had a couple of neobanks. So it was just almost the beginning of that wave. So there wasn't too much data on it, to be honest. And so at that point, we were kind of shooting in the dark until we found, this example that I had used in the UK called Monzo.
Yeah, I've heard of Monzo before. Yes. Yeah. So maybe for the benefit of the audience, maybe you can just define what a neobank is, because I guess some people might not even know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the definition is variable, but here's my definition. So it's either neobank or a challenger bank.
A challenger
Yeah,
bank.
and the
Wow.
challenger bank is even more like self-explanatory. It's
Yes.
effectively taking the kind of your traditional banking systems, the processes, the customer experience, one, making it fully digital, and then two, giving the or reducing the friction between the services. So either reducing the cost, reducing the time it takes to access a service, and providing a lot more transparency.
Mm.
So one of the first things Monzo, which was the first digital bank in the UK, did was really simple but really like effective, right? So they were able to give users the ability to see the transactions that they are spending in real time. So like you
Mm.
could pay somewhere and just get a notification you've paid at this coffee shop or etc. So small things like that, and then removing like your, you know, the onboarding process. So like instead of going to a branch and having an experience, good or bad, you just eliminate that, make it fully digital, and you're able to create an account wherever you are if you have a mobile phone within 5 minutes. So the challenger bank is taking every step of this banking or interactions between traditional institutions and individuals and reinventing it so that it's a much better customer experience. And then
Mm.
now the neobank aspect is now kind of targeting it specifically towards a demographic and tailoring it towards that demographic. And that's what we did. We tailored it towards young people, and we kind of came out deliberately wanting to be for the youth because we saw some really interesting data. And one of the data points was that the median age in Kenya and across Africa actually is 19.
Only
And so
19.
only
Wow.
19. So actually, you don't have a lot of bank accounts open. In fact, actually, you have about 1 million people opening their first bank account every single year in Kenya alone. So even just focusing on that demographic alone, you've got such a huge market size. And we were seeing, kind of incumbents not really tapping into that.
Mm. So I want to come back again to this founding moment, because invariably I'm kind of keen to understand, because you're at a concept level, you have these co-founders that you've now sort of brought into the flow, and I presume, maybe you've done share swapping or share distribution or something. But what happens next is clearly you have to build a product and you have to get some seed funding of some kind, I presume.
Yes.
So I'm just curious about that particular phase. How does it come together, both on the product side and then also just, I guess raising money to actually start moving, maybe you're bootstrapping, I don't know, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about that phase.
Yeah, absolutely. So bootstrapping is the word, right?
Okay.
Like pure bootstrapping. So what that means is that because you're in financial services, you almost can't just launch a financial service product.
Mm.
And
Regulations and all,
at the
no?
time, we were very naive to that, right?
Mm.
And it was a good thing that we were, because we invited investors to kind of come in, and we told them we're going to do all these amazing things. But actually, there are a couple of steps that we needed to follow before that. So bootstrapping, in the sense that, because we can't like launch a bank, we need a license, etc. We're looking for ways to enter the market, because you need such a big team to manage the complexity of the app. And at the time, we're just four people. So all we could do is build wireframes, i.e.,
Wow.
like, just a Figma level design of what the app would look like. And at that point, we started looking for banking partners. We came across EcoBank, who had this wonderful fintech partnership program.
Mm.
Actually, we tried to get a bank account first. So not bank account, a banking license first.
Okay.
Um, terrible, few meetings. The meetings did not go well
This is
at
the
all.
central bank.
With just people.
Wow.
Walking up to people who are in the industry, either bankers or investors in the space, and saying, "Yo, can we get a bank license?" And they were just like, "No,
Doesn't work like
it
that.
doesn't really work. Doesn't really work like that."
So naivety, right?
Yeah, lots of naivety, right? So so after that, we're like, okay, fine, no one's gonna give us this bank license. Let's
Yeah.
Potter, and which ended up being, an incredible decision for us. So that's kind of on the operation side. But on the fundraising side, like, I think one of the incredible resources that are now available is just, kind of this group of Y Combinator resources and videos. So actually, before we got into YC, we were consuming a lot of, how to raise a seed round, how to, like, issue safe notes, like very detailed
Mm.
guidance from YC's publicly available, YouTube videos or tutorials or websites on just how to, like, get started with a startup. So we just followed that, right? We just consumed that, kind of those notes online. We followed that. We started raising from friends and family, like really small amounts of money. Like, you give me $500, you give me $100. Like,
Mm. Almost
that's
like crowdsourcing.
yeah, literally crowdsourcing. We got some incredible angel investors. We built some momentum, and this was, I think, me just pitching like full time until we got into a really strong angel community who ultimately backed us. And then a couple months later, we got into Y Combinator. So it was actually pretty quick from starting full time to like getting into Y Combinator. So I think that's what kind of changed the fundraising landscape for us.
So two separate things. One, at this point, are you already with EcoBank?
So we're having conversations with
Oh,
EcoBank.
nothing has happened
Yeah,
yet.
we're having we haven't signed anything. We're just having conversations. Yeah.
Now, Y Combinator YC is not exactly an easy place to get into. I think I've looked at the statistics, and to get in, you have to be pretty lucky or super competent, or your idea is just incredibly sound. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? And I think many of our audience would love to hear what that took, what that entailed, and what they should, if some of them are considering this, applying to something like YC, what does it actually take?
Yeah. No, that I think YC is probably the best startup investor in the world and the best accelerator. So for us, we were always gonna apply. So I was always gonna apply. Whether we get in or not, I don't know. But our ambition was like, we just have to apply. So at the time, I was 23. Our median age as co-founders was a little lower than that. So like, we had no business starting a bank or
Mm.
applying to YC or any of these things, right? But we had both feet in, so we're just like, why not? So it's a really, I guess, simple thing. Like, it's just a application form online.
Oh, literally.
It's
Okay.
just a form online. Anyone can apply when their cohorts are open. It's just a form online. So at the time, I think what benefited us is that we were able to really articulate the problem and solution that we were solving, which is just banking is really hard. Young people in Africa are gonna need banking for the next, forever, and no one's really solved it, and we want to be the ones to solve it. And so it was. I think it was the simplicity of it that got us to the first
Mm.
stage. So we got to the first stage, which is just application. And then, from our point of view, like, I don't even think our my co-founders knew I'd applied. So I sent the
Wow.
application first, just as a by the way, like I'm just,
Just trying out.
just
Yeah.
spent a night writing it. Um, Later on, we get an invitation to an interview. And I'm like, all right, guys, we have an interview for YC. So we all kind of, kind of sit. It was 2021, so like in smack dab of COVID. So
Mm.
typically the interviewees have to fly into San Francisco, do the interview there in person, but we just had to do it virtually. So I remember we all took notes, and we're like, if they ask this, then this is what we're gonna say.
Mm.
We're really well prepared, but the interview did not go well at all. Like
Wow.
we were like speaking over each other. We had like the group partners from my combinator, including Michael Seibel, trying to get information out of us, and we're really doing our best to give, but we're like oversharing. We're like nervous.
Mm.
Actually, when the interview ended, we all just kind of felt bad. We didn't say anything for a while. And then the next morning we had a meeting and I was just like, who needs YC guys? We'll build this business regardless. Cause we're
So
like, we're definitely
you're
not getting
convinced that
in.
this is not gonna happen,
We're like,
yeah?
we don't even want them. We reject you. So like we were just like, we're not getting in.
Yeah.
Let's just move on, right? And then I get a call from Michael Seibel, and he's like, you guys need to show us a couple more details about your business plan and what you're trying to accomplish. And, I send them the details. And then, yeah, he just says, you're in. And
What?
yeah, complete
Who is Michael
disbelief.
Seibel, but if I may ask?
So Michael Cyber is the managing partner or group partner in charge of the startup program. So he's like the
Uh-huh.
president, or not president, but like the main startup lead at Y Combinator.
Wow.
Legendary investor. Really one of the people that pushed Y Combinator into Africa for the first time,
Ah.
and pushed for that diversity into Africa. So he's a very like renowned investor in Silicon Valley. Yeah.
So basically this comes out of the blues. You're now in.
Out of the blue, completely, like no one really plans to get into Wake Up. You just kind of apply. So yeah, we get in, and we are like ecstatic rather. We thank the Lord. Have a couple of parties,
Yeah.
and then we're like, all right, let's get to work. Yeah.
And I'm imagining the work when you're in YC is a lot of work.
Very intense.
Yeah.
Because we were doing it remotely, so
Yes.
we'd work on the business during the day, and the Y Combinator would happen like on Pacific time. So we'd then do the sessions in the evening. So it was quite
Wow.
an intense couple months,
Almost like being back in school.
like just being back in school,
But
literally.
but what I've heard about YC, which is interesting, is that they really stress test the validity or the strength of your business idea and the plan and the monetization and the runway. So basically, it's continuous iteration. If I'm not wrong, refining, validating, and of course, you're sitting with people who've been there and done that. So if there's any fluff, they'll take it away, right?
Oh yeah. I think that's probably the main thing about YC. One, they give you a lot of tools, and then they put you in a mindset, right? And the mindset is that getting into YC is not success. Like the second you're in YC, like you're not successful. You are, in fact, I think one of the group partners was mentioning that, everyone, we're on a call with like a few hundred startups, and the guy is just like, dude, you're all dead startups right now. Like
There's
you're not,
nothing
like you're
special
not
here.
alive. You've not accomplished anything. The win is having happy customers, and then beyond that is making revenue from those happy customers. Like that
Mm,
is the win, right? So like just focusing your mindset on what it means to be victorious or successful as a
yeah,
startup. So like it's not the press, it's not the fundraising, it's not the kind of YC badge. It's having happy customers and making money from those customers, or creating value so that they can pay you for that value. Like that is the win. So you end up really, really thinking critically about, one, the value you're providing the customers. And then I think the focus of it is, you're obviously a small team by the time you enter YC, so no revenue, barely an MVP. So a lot of the focus is how can you get something into your customer's hand that they can use and give you
Mm,
feedback, like in whatever rudimentary way? How can you just ship it really quickly and then get really objective feedback? So every week you have goals, and the goals are oriented around what are your customers saying, right? What are the, and I think that's kind of counterintuitive, because when you enter, you're thinking, you have this mindset of, let me look at competitors, let me look at the
mm,
landscape. But actually, and I think one thing that benefited us is we have a really technical team and co-founding team, and so we're able to, like, kind of deliver software and experience into the user's hands, and
mm.
then kind of get feedback from that.
Fantastic. So at this point, you have some kind of a product.
So at this point we have like a really rudimentary product. You can buy airtime, like just some
Ah,
basic things that we've like hacked together. And that's when we sign EcoBank, and we're able to like enter a sandbox and begin testing with actual live customers.
so at some point you graduate from YC, right? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And at that point, is that when now you meet up with EcoBank, or they came in when you're still in
we
YC?
we started speaking to EcoBank before YC,
Uh-huh.
and then we signed EcoBank during YC, and then actually just began testing, creating a sandbox and testing users during that
The why
period.
so this is the APIs and all this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why the partnership with EcoBank? What do they bring to the mix that makes Fingo work?
So I think EcoBank is one of the really unique banks, I'd say even in the world,
Uh-huh.
that has kind of embraced this idea of fintech and disruption with fintech.
Mm,
Whether that means, EcoBank disrupting themselves to accompany fintechs, or EcoBank using a fintech to disrupt the market. So either way, like, they're one of the really really unique banks that have embraced this idea of disruption, and so it makes them kind of the perfect partner for a fintech that wants to disrupt and doesn't want to kind of doesn't want to fight the system, wants to kind of join someone who has kind of already established themselves,
yeah,
and now wants to like help this wave of disruption. So I'd say the attitude is different with the bank. I'd say they are, they're large, they're in very
yeah.
many markets, 33 African markets. So
Mm.
that saves us time and money in just expanding. So we're able to do that with this partnership.
So I'm gonna ask now, you've got EcoBank, you've got momentum now, you've got some sort of MVP, presumably. At what point, because I think for me, what is interesting about your product is, number one, the onboarding process is incredibly seamless, so easy. And then secondly, the user experience that you've created in the app. Maybe we can talk a little bit about how those two work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first pain point is just kind of going into um, a really long KYC process, or know your customer process, which is the process banks make you go through to open an account.
Mm,
Which is, I need your ID, I need your like address, I need your kind of proof of beneficiaries. Like, there's a long list of
mm,
documentation that usually takes weeks to fill in,
yeah.
and so we just digitize that. So you have an app, you download it, you just fill in the details, and instead of like presenting your ID to a physical branch, we use your camera to take a picture of the ID. We use your selfie camera in the front-facing side of your phone to take a video of your face. We're
Hmm.
able to authenticate that this is you. It's not tampered with, using AI and a couple of other algorithms
Okay.
and the government database. And then that then gives us a very accurate reading of who's opening the account. And from there, we get things like geolocation, we get your age, or rather your biodata, and that just satisfies the requirements that the central bank needs to allow us to give you a bank account. So that ends up being a really advanced and quick way to just onboard people. And I think, speaking to young people, like, they just don't want to go to branches, right? Like, it's just not a
Mm,
fun experience.
mm.
And so this becomes a fun, intuitive process. It's like, you're signing up to like a really fun, kind of easy to use app. So that gives an enjoyable experience, which is contrary to what you get from a traditional institution.
I mean, obviously, I've installed and used your app a little bit before, but I think you need to talk a little bit,
Excuse me.
probably about the user experience,
Yes.
because I remember the first time I looked at it, I was like, "What? This is a mobile banking app?" Yet it felt more like a social media
Social.
app. So
Yeah.
maybe you can talk a little bit about the UX and what, I guess, maybe makes the app interesting or ideal for the youth segment that you're targeting.
Yeah, so that was a very deliberate decision. So we wanted to do something that was social. So social meaning that you can experience social features like, chat features. So when you send money on Fingo, you get a chat bubble, like, a WhatsApp chat. When you're able to receive money, you can request money. The colors are, almost, fun and feel social. So you feel, so the feeling of it is kind of endearing to the app,
Mm,
and you're able to share it with friends. So we had a lot of social features that were built in, and we took inspiration from this from a couple of different people. So one is Cash App,
mm,
one is Monzo, but Cash App specifically because got a lot of popularity in the US because it was being promoted by, artists. So like Megan the Stallion and other
oh,
rappers.
okay.
And people in the US would be like, just cash app me, or here's my cash app tag. And that did a couple of things. One, it gave people some level of anonymity. So you're not exactly giving your phone number, etc. You're giving like a tag, which we've kind of recreated in the Fingo tag. And you're also able to share it. So that became one of the main drivers of our growth. So people referring other people feeling like this is a bank app, but it's kind of for me as a young African. So it's
Mm,
like designed for me. The UX UI is similar to, something I've used on a social app. You don't have to go through like a rigorous like how to use the app.
it's
Right. You can
intuitive.
just, it's very intuitive. Like you've sent a message before, you can send money on Fingo, basically. You've used WhatsApp, you've used other social apps, you can use Fingo. And that became the genesis of kind of this idea of let's, build for young people, even by young people, but like very deliberately in software in the app.
And then I think there's something else that you normally promote, which is the amount of time it takes you to onboard. Maybe you can talk a little
Absolutely.
bit about that.
Yeah, so the 240 seconds was something we're very, very passionate about, which is, by the time you download the app, fill in all your documents, can we give you an account with a bank account number that's powered by EcoBank, and then have you receive and send money within that, 4 minute timestamp. And that was a combination of the onboarding process, so the digital KYC where we get all your data digitally,
Hmm.
and secondly, by the intuitiveness of the app. So our theory is that, you know, our thesis is that everyone in the next 10 years is going to have a smartphone. Everyone's going to have a smartphone. Everyone's going to have access to data. Everyone's going to have a couple of apps on their phone. And these people are not going to want to visit physical, institutions for the services. And so that became, kind of the selling point. And when we tell people that, they're like, I don't believe you. And we're like, all right, just try it. Just try it. I'll watch you. I'm right here. Let me know if it works. And it does work. And so that was kind of one of the magical things that we, initially were like, this is gonna be we're gonna have to educate people that, you can actually do this, and for them to trust us to do this. So that was, yeah, a really, really powerful thing.
That's incredible. So basically, in 4 minutes, you're up and running.
Up and running. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I was actually at the launch of Fingo, I think
Yes.
last year, which His Excellency, the President, I believe, came
Yeah.
for.
Graced us.
And I'll never forget there's a speech you gave, or rather the presentation you made, where you talked about, I think, a little bit about the brain drain and opportunities in Africa, and that Fingo exists to sort of fundamentally empower young Africans. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I think that philosophy, for me, felt like really the underpinning reason why Fingo exists.
Yeah, absolutely. So Africa's poor, right?
That's a
Let's
reality.
start off there.
Yeah.
Africa's poor. Young people don't have enough opportunities. Young people don't have institutions built for them, leave alone like financial institutions, right?
Mm,
Like the education institutions, they're not like, if you have a choice between an education institution here or abroad, you're picking
mm,
something that's built abroad because it feels more intentional. Legal systems, like, there's so many institutions that I would actually just redesign for this youth population, but right
mm,
now they're just not built for them. So what happens is that you have a lot of young people just wanting to leave the continent. They don't have the opportunity to succeed here because the institutions were built, they're almost suffocating young people. And
mm,
so, that I think that's why Africa is poor. We have institutions that are just not built to help young people create wealth. And so Fingo is a first step in that, like a small step in that, but a really important step, because giving access to financial services helps these young people create wealth. You can run a business, you can receive money and send money at cheaper fees, but it's not the end all be all. And the reason we built Fingo specifically for this population is because we think that this then starts a kind of domino effect where other institutions begin being built a purpose built for these young people and
Mm,
helping them create wealth. And so what I want the next 20, 30 years is a lot of the young people coming to their first jobs, starting businesses, we want them to be wealthy, right? We want the people that the banks have overlooked. We want the people that the traditional institutions, whatever they are, have overlooked. We want them to succeed, to become wealthy, to use Fingo and use it as a tool to become wealthy, and
yeah.
ultimately help Africa become the wealthiest continent, because we will have the largest population here.
How does Fingo then make them wealthy? I'm just curious. Is it because you provide a highly efficient, highly digitized process which allows them to retain more of their money, perhaps? How do you see that actually happening on a practical level?
So, on a practical level, two ways. One is running your financial life, which is either transacting, like moving money, being able to move money for a lot cheaper, and in some instances free if your friends are on Fingo,
Mm,
to our savings products, right? So actually wealth creating products. So like being able to like save money, earn an interest on that money. Then three, running your business. So we want to be able to create business accounts where people can actually have tools to run their business on Fingo
mm,
that help them actually generate more revenue, enable trade, not just in Kenya, but like across the continent. So you use Fingo as a platform to not just your personal wealth, but you know, kind of scale your business across Africa. And that's kind of the practical way we want Fingo to do that. And then there's also like a kind of an effect that's not particularly in the software, which is if you make financial services easy for people, they can then kind of free up that time to be entrepreneurs. They can free up their time to kind of challenge other systems, like raise capital to challenge other systems. So it's a small friction that you free up, and then kind of unlocks other systems to kind of begin falling in place to serve this youth or young generation.
I think what I'm hearing you say, and maybe this is maybe more of the overarching agenda here, it's not just about banking as a
It's
service.
not. It's not.
It's a complete financial stroke business ecosystem that it sounds like you want to build here.
Exactly. It's not just banking. It's looking at how we interact with financial services, and then how we think about institutions. So we want
Mm,
Fingo to be an institution for young people, right? And you look at all the digital things you can do on a banking app. It's not just moving money. Like you can add tools that create financial education, which we do have on Fingo, right?
mm.
So educate yourself on how to create wealth, educate yourself on how to invest, educate yourself on how to kind of understand how global trade policies affect your business and tax and etc. So like it is a really powerful tool for you to kind of understand and begin kind of attacking this world that's kind of not necessarily made for you to win, but this tool has made you has given you the access or the strength to make that attack.
Wow. I think I just had my aha moment about Fingo. Like, okay, that's pretty audacious, pretty
Yeah,
ambitious,
yeah,
if you ask me. So that's interesting. So, since Fingo launched,
yeah,
I think it's give or take a year ago.
yeah,
Am I right?
yeah.
I know that at about January, you hit your milestone of 100,000 users.
Yes,
And when we spoke earlier, you had about 150 now. Is that correct?
yes.
Which I think is so impressive for a brand new brand, less than a year old. That's really impressive.
Thank you.
I'm sure many banks are envious that you've already got such numbers.
I mean, they should have served young people first, but yeah, no,
But that's
it's been an
telling you
accomplishment.
something.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in that journey, give or take a year, what are some of the interesting insights or lessons learned, possibly challenges encountered? I know even just getting operational must have been a massive challenge, getting the regulator to support you. But what are some of the things that you've seen and understood in the last year or so being on the ground, so to speak?
Yeah, seen and understood and learned very many things. I don't even know how to
Mm,
summarize them. And I think one thing that, when I sit with my co-founders or our team, is that we face so many like daily challenges that,
mm.
like, when I talk about it, I'm like, you almost just have to say that, the only thing that matters is persistence, right? And I can't even highlight one challenge because definitely yesterday there was something, the day before there's something. Like
It
it's
just
just
keeps
it
going.
just keeps going, right? But having persistence, having a strong team that can kind of innovate around these challenges, and I think being very like conscious that our approach to solving a lot of these challenges is a mix of software and a mix of like really critical advice, like really strong partnerships. So you know it's hard for me to highlight. Actually, in fact, if there's kind of young people or people that want to follow the journey, I think one is that it's not a game of who moves fastest. It's not a game of kind of who kind of just has the easiest time. It's actually a game of like who can solve problems quickest and with the most consistency, right? So consistently for solving problems really, really quick. And so you almost become like a professional problem solver. I'd say that is your role as CEO or co-founder. Like you're a professional problem solver.
Professional
Like
firefighter.
you're a professional firefighter. Like you're not waking up to like do fun things. You're waking up to like solve hard problems, right? And so you build that muscle, and like now like the problems are less intense, but they're more critical. So you have a team around you that is really really competent, extremely kind of on it. And so you're a professional problem solver with other professional problem solvers. So I'd say that's what I'd say.
So it's not one single thing, but
Yeah,
just
I can't
all.
even, the one thing is maybe in yourself, like understanding that you yourself have to become the person that solves problems. Like, you'll face all sorts of things from, regulation to like the product to like things crashing to, people wanting to leave the company because things are
Wow.
hard. Like you face every type of problem. So I think the biggest thing is you yourself becoming a problem solver. So that's what you actually have to almost become. You have to become the problem solver and have a group of other problem solvers. And just as a profession, just, want to, need to, and have to.
I always like to tell people that, especially when I have friends who have been employed for a long time and in the corporate space, and every so often one of them will come up for air and tell you know what, I think I'm ready now. I'm ready to do it myself. And I always tell them, are you really ready? Are you sure? And I tell them, here's what it's like. When you're in an employed scenario in a good organization, whenever there are bumps and issues on the road, you never actually feel them because the organization insulates you from
Yeah,
it.
cushion from it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that also means that you're not 100% in control because if they wake up and say we're slashing senior management by 20%, you're very much possibly in that list. You could be.
Yeah.
However, in the entrepreneurial journey, everything that goes well and everything that goes badly is on you. Meaning that I like to use the analogy of it's like being in a car with broken suspensions and no cushions on the seats, and every little thing on the road, you feel it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
And I think you probably can attest to the
Honestly,
same.
put that to an extreme. You're in a rocket ship. The rocket ship only has an engine, no seats. You're all like building the rest of the rocket ship as it's hurling into space, right?
Yes.
so, it's a very different mindset. Like you have to be that person that kind of takes that rocket ship into like very very raw form into a complete ship before it gets to orbit and you all freeze and die. Like you have to
Yeah.
be able to do that.
Stuff. And you're
Yeah.
so young. I mean, you're pretty young doing all this. So I'm kind of curious, what's the way forward, the next 2 to 5 years? Where do you see Fingo going?
Absolutely. So we want to build the largest digital bank in the world. Um,
Wow, in the world, not
in
even
the
Africa
world,
anymore.
in the world. You can do that in Africa. You can do that in
Just
Africa.
the numbers allow you to do so.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Large digital banks across the world. You look at Nubank, which is not 100 million customers. You look at others in Europe, which are like in the tens of millions. Obviously, you have Asia, a couple in Asia, but you have an opportunity in Africa to build, for 1 billion people, right? And like really win that market. And even half of that, you're already the largest in the world, right? So, yeah, that's the goal, world domination.
That is massive.
Yeah.
And I think you realistically can do this because as you pointed out earlier, I think the unbanked is such a big
It's
population of the
huge.
young,
Yeah.
and there's almost like this ready market potentially that you can pick up.
Absolutely. And I think there's like a misconception that people I think have about Africa, which is, because it's poor right now, these services are not essential. But if you're thinking that way, then you're not gonna do much on the continent. Our thesis is that Africa will be rich. Something like things are gonna happen, right? You have AI coming out, you have all sorts of different technologies in agriculture, in energy, like Africa is not just gonna like sit around and wait for this to pass it. Like there's a lot of brilliant Africans that are gonna take these technologies, create a lot of wealth. Like in less than a decade, you're gonna see so much change. And I think there are people that just don't see it. And because they don't see there's enough, they kind of neglect the fact that this is a big opportunity.
Mm,
But I think things are gonna change, even politically. Like you're looking at Africa becoming a single trading corridor. You're looking at
mm.
more and more stable countries. You're looking at kind of countries addressing legacy issues like their debt and etc. So you're having a lot of strong macro trends that are just pointing at growth. And you have to be an optimist. You have to be like, these people are gonna have, high per capita income. These social structures are gonna be better, and you want to be there when that
You want to
happens.
arrive and be available
You
when
want to
that
be there when
moment
that wins.
happens.
Exactly.
In
Yeah.
fact, you're kind of reminding me. I think it might have been mentioned at the launch, and I think the CEO of EcoBank, Jeremy, I
Yes.
believe, he said something to the effect that what EcoBank is trying to do is actually unify Africa, at least from a financial perspective, in the sense that I think he pointed out that it's easier to send money outside Africa than it is to send money within Africa,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that EcoBank hopefully is trying to solve for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that you're working with them, I think, opens that opportunity to be a part of that process, correct?
Absolutely. So a very mission aligned partner. And I think you have to have that type of partnership where we all understand that it's a foundational work. It's really hard, but foundational work. Like simple things like send money to you know, you have an investment opportunity in Malawi or investment opportunity in Ghana, etc. Like you have to be able to move that money quickly because those opportunities don't like last for long. But right now, it's gonna take a while to move that money, right? So like partnering with EcoBank gives us the opportunity to like kind of ride on their mission and kind
Mm.
of attach this youth agenda that kind of propels that forward.
Great. So I'm curious to understand. I mean, you're a pretty young guy, you're doing stuff, but I imagine that this is probably all consuming. I also happened to notice, or rather came across some information online, how you sort of separate work from personal life. I understand you have an affinity for FIFA.
I do, I
Maybe
do.
just talk a little bit about how you manage the work and the personal side of things.
Good question. Good question. I mean, there's very little balance in the sense that
Uh-huh.
I'm available for work at any point. Like if you're, a colleague of mine, you can call me at any point and I'll be there, right? So like again, goes with being a firefighter. Like if there's a
Mm,
fire, like you're not gonna press the snooze button, you're gonna get there. But I think so. Yeah, the balance is not great, but it's also necessary. Like I'm happy to do that right now. Like what else am I doing, right? Like I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to go hard. I think the mission is worthwhile. I do enjoy a lot of PlayStation, so I play a lot of FIFA. I do have time for friends.
mm,
I do love, kind of. I have friends from the UK and elsewhere, and from other places. So I do really enjoy that community. I think the world has gotten a lot smaller, so you
mm,
have a lot more in common. A few years ago, if you grew up on different sides of the world, you don't have that much in common. Right
mm,
now, you have so much in common, right? Like I can go to the US and crack the same jokes with my peers there, as and we didn't grow up, we've never met, right? So like I think the world has gotten so much smaller because of TikTok and Insta and all these social media tools that I'm able to like travel and kind of have good relationships with people from across the world, and even other entrepreneurs. So I think that's also been a really strong part of my community, which is sharing our trauma with other entrepreneurs and understanding that we're all in the same boat. We're all kind of working for this mission that's greater than us, which is
mm.
building Africa, and it does come with sacrifice. Like it does come with
Absolutely.
sacrifice. It's not going to be an easy time, right? And I think that's something that I'm reminded of, and there's other people on that journey as well. So yeah, the balancing is not so good, but like when you do have it, you enjoy it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thoughts in terms of the entrepreneurial journey so far. I imagine a lot of our audience will be young like yourself that want to maybe hear a little bit about some of the things that maybe they should consider or know based on your experience. Are there any words of wisdom, any nuggets to share that you think could be important to any aspiring or even existing entrepreneurs who could benefit from your experience?
Absolutely. One, it is super easy if you just do one thing, which is
Mm,
just go into it very stupid. Like, don't have any assumptions as to what works, doesn't work. Go into it extremely stupid, right? That way you will absorb as much information as you can. And I think that's kind of when that clicked to us, like as a founding team, that's when things became like really like really easy to some degree. Like, we became like, students of the journey, like not masters, right? We became
mm,
students of the journey. We're just gonna try this. And then we get a really unexpected return. And before we used to be like really upset, but now we're just like, more curious about why that, output was the way it is. So I'd say be really, really stupid, like be as naive as possible. Ask the questions that you would never think to ask. Not why does this work? How does this work? Like ask the most radical questions, right? Like why does this work now? Like how can it work differently? So I think that's probably the main advice I'd give. Be stupid, be naive at whatever age of entrepreneurship. I think that is the best way to approach it.
that sounds fantastic. And what about maybe I've heard you mention your founders a lot in this conversation. Would you say there's something to be said about the founding team or the team that you build around you?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is a lonely journey, right? If you are able to get co-founders to share that journey with you, it
Mm.
just makes it fun, right? You want to go to work, you want to sit, watching a dashboard that where everything's going wrong, and you don't want to be alone. Like you don't want to be alone. You want to be with like other people that are just, all kind of like looking for solutions together and like crying together and like, going out together. Like you just want to have a community of people that have shared values. And that's the founding team, right? And also you want to have fun doing it. You want to have people to share the wins with, right? Um, so I'd say the founding team is, or having a co-founder is like super, super essential because it makes the journey more enjoyable. You can carry the load with someone else as opposed to like carrying the load by yourself. And there are a lot of founders who carry the load by themselves, and hats off to them. And I think, us being, four co-founders was very intentional
Yeah,
because we knew it's going to be a hard, long journey. And we wanted to kind of work with people that we enjoyed with. Like you want to go to work and actually enjoy it. So I'd say, yeah, it makes the journey a lot more enjoyable.
it lightens the load a little bit.
Lightens the load. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So as we come to the end of our conversation, I think I just have two more questions or rather requests. I think number one, if any of our audience want to find out more about Fingo and how they can get the app, where can they do that? And then of course, if there are any incentives for them to join, that would be great. And then secondly, if they want to find you online and figure out how to connect with you, possibly partner with you, maybe work for you, where can they also find you as well?
Absolutely. So very happy for everyone to download the app. So it's just Africa. That's the website. On your app stores, Google or Apple, it's just Fingo Africa. Free to sign up, free to create an account, and then you can send me some money if you'd like. Uh,
Yeah.
as well as happy for everyone to contact me on my LinkedIn or other socials. It's just Kiiru Muhoya. Yeah,
Thank you so much. It's
yeah.
been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And wishing you all the best. I think the new milestones, we're looking forward to them. Acquiring more users, but more importantly, also seeing how you're going to expand your proposition
Yes.
in terms of the features and functionalities, and of course, the different geographies that you hope to join and become a part of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there you have it. Kiru Muhoya from Fingo giving us the lowdown on what they're doing, how they've been progressing over the past year, and more importantly, the journey that he's been through to get Fingo where it is from an entrepreneur perspective. We'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.